Welcome back to today's edition of the Daily Word. I'm Jeremiah. This morning we're going to be in Mark 7, verses 14 to 23. Mark 7, 14 to 23, and we're going to approach our passage in two parts. We'll hear the truth told, and we'll watch the truth unfold. We'll hear the truth told, we'll watch the truth unfold. Well, the truth told comes in verses 14 to 15. And in verses 14 to 15, Jesus gives a simple analogy to convey divine truth. Here's the God of truth explaining truth. And before we look at this analogy, you need to remember that the Jews were obsessed with ritual purity. They had this extensive system of rites and rituals and ceremonies that they followed religiously in order to maintain their ritual purity, in order to remain unspotted and unspoiled by the world. That was their way of maintaining their righteousness before God. So they had this extensive series of prescriptions they had to follow in order to maintain their righteousness, so they thought. Now, it is true that in Leviticus, God gave them a number of necessary prescriptions to follow. So God was concerned about purity, and there were many things they could do and could not do in order to maintain ritual purity before God, ceremonial purity. However, it was never about the externals with God. It always was meant to point to the heart. It was meant to be symbolic of the things that corrupt the heart. But the Jews misunderstood that. So Jesus targets their misunderstanding with a simple analogy. He says, it's not what goes into you that defiles you, it's what comes out. That's the truth told. A simple analogy. Stuff that goes into you doesn't defile you. It's the stuff that comes out of you. Well, that's the simple truth. That's the truth told. Now, let's watch the truth unfold. The truth begins to unfold in verse 18. And here Jesus begins with the physical. Jesus says, listen, if it goes into your mouth, it progresses to your stomach, and then your digestion takes care of it. And then you pass it out at the end. It doesn't defile you. What goes into your mouth does not defile you. That would have been a shocking statement for the Jews. And importantly, in that one sentence, what goes into your mouth can't defile you, Jesus does away with all the dietary laws, all the minutiae of the Pharisees, their rituals, all of it he does away right there. Boom. One sentence, he erases it all. And he says, basically, he declares all food to be clean. Again, that would have come as a shock to them. So Jesus starts with the physical. He says, hey, if it goes into your mouth, it doesn't make you unclean. Foods, therefore, are clean. They can't defile you. So he moves from the physical to the spiritual. In verse 20, Jesus presses on and says, hey, listen, it's the stuff that comes out of your heart that defiles you. You need to understand that it's an internal problem. It's the stuff that comes out of your heart. That's what defiles you, what dirties you. And the heart is not that beating organ that maybe we think of when we say heart. Hebrews used heart in the sense of the control person, or the rather control center of the person. It's that center of emotion, will, intellect, thought, volition. That's what he means by heart. It's the inner man, you could say. It's what comes out of the inner man that defiles a person. And then it gives a list of 12 things, 12 examples that defile a person. And you'll note, none of them are food. They're all things that come out of the human heart. The first 6 are plural, and they are acts. They're actions. The first 6 are plural, they refer to acts. The next 6 are singular, and they refer to attitudes. Now let me just briefly walk through them with you. Evil thoughts. That refers to evil attitudes, evil intentions, thoughts, and purposes. Next, sexual immorality. Well, this is any sexual sin. And it's no surprise that sexual immorality comes second, because it's such a pervasive sin among men, among humans, that is. It's just powerful, pervasive, and destructive. And even in our own culture, we see how that cancer of immorality is corroding us from within. And that's always been the case in the human heart. Next, he says theft and murder. Then he says adultery, which really has the idea of sexual activity that violates the marriage covenant. It violates the marriage covenant you've made. Next, there's coveting. And really, that's greediness. That's when you sinfully desire something that isn't yours. He then mentions wickedness, which is any form of evil that arises in the heart. He moves on to deceit, which has to do with deception and lying. Then he says sensuality. Well, sensuality would be any sexually inappropriate speech or behavior. Then Jesus says envy, slander is abusive speech about others, pride, which is thinking you're better than you are, thinking you're superior to others, and finally foolishness, which is being senseless, which is having bad thinking, sinful thinking. Now, Jesus says that this is a sample of the sins that defile you and that corrupt you. It's not your food. It's the filth that flows out of your heart. And this isn't forced upon you, mind you, from the outside. It's not the environment. It's not our neighbors. It's not our family. It's not the culture. It's not the media. It flows from within. So the question is, well, what's the solution? What's the solution to that kind of heart? Is it washing your hands, cleaning the cup? No. Ezekiel 36 says you need a new heart that only God can give, and he can sprinkle you with clean water. That's what the Jews needed. That's what people need today. That's why Jesus says to Nicodemus, you must be born again, which, by the way, isn't a work that you can accomplish. It's only something God can do. So the solution to the corruption within is we need God to give us a new heart and to sprinkle us clean with pure water. We need him to give us the new birth.